Hello guys, my name is Matt from paintacademy.com and today I will show you how to paint very easy Alpha Legion armor. And when I'm saying it's very easy, I really mean it. It's like only 2 steps and you can have it done in under half an hour. My subject here is Primaris Infiltrator and I thought it will fit the Alpha Legion style very well. Anyway, let me show you which tools I used for this paint job. I used very cheap makeup brush I stole from my wife, and I think most of like cheap or medium priced makeup brushes would really work for this technique, and try to use something with similar size and shape. You will also need some kind of silver paint. I use this one, but you can use any kind you want. Just pick the brightest you have. Also, you will need some kind of contrast or shade paint. I picked this one, but it's really up to you. And the first step is to dry brush the whole model. Try to get a really dry brush for this technique, and you can always do more layers of very dry paint, and it's hard to undo it, so try to do more layers than one very thick one. Yeah, and try to dry brush over all the places that are really picking up the lighting. So in the principle it will be like the most visible parts. And the description may sound odd, but the usual suspects are calves, knees, top of the chest, shoulders, head, top of the backpack, or overall backpack. And I can't stress it enough, do more thin layers than one thick layer. It's like the main principle of painting miniatures, and in this case of very fine dry brushing, it's still very important. I did like 2 layers of dry brushing in total, but I got the paint consistency right the first time, so it was fairly easy for me. But don't get discouraged to do it a few times before you get it right. You can always put another prime layer of black to cover the mistakes and do it all over again. That's really fine for training. And when you get it right, you will be able to do a lot of Space Marines in one sitting, so it's really worth to give it a time to learn this technique. And don't try to dry brush under the model, so don't try to reach the armpits or under the knees. Just leave the shadow there, so you think about it like doing only the highlights. It's really important to do only the highlights and know the very dark places, because it counts as shadow and you want to keep the contrast from black to almost silver and transitioning immediately, and with this dry brushing technique you can do it fairly easily. Also, this dry brushing gives you like the nice metal texture on the model, so you will have some smudges here and there, and that's fine. Just try to make them look like something that comes out naturally, not like really the obvious brush strokes. And if something looks not as you like it, just give it another round of dry brushing. And try to do all your brush strokes from the top to the bottom or across the model. Try to avoid doing brush strokes from the bottom to the top, unless you have a very good reason to do that. If you don't feel very confident, try to emulate my pattern of brush strokes, and when you will feel confident with it, just do whatever you want. For me, it's also a new technique. For the longest time, I thought the dry brushing is only for doing bases, but apparently not. I experimented with a little bit and I got very good results. So it's really easy to learn, and you don't need to have like very high brush skills to do it right. Just try to keep it fairly clean for dry brushing. And also remember that this technique works only for armor. You will still need to paint all the other parts with normal painting techniques, but still you get very ahead of everything just by having all the armor done very quickly. And if I would paint like the full silver metal armor Space Marines, like the Knights of the Raven, I would do this stuff plus maybe a little bit of null oil wash here and there, and maybe some black lining, and I would call it done, because this silver still looks very good by itself. Okay, so I think you got it. This is fairly simple technique, so I think I'm a little bit over explaining the whole process. If something is unclear, just ask me a question in comment section and then I will try to help you. And I will just cut to the next step, which is applying contrast paint to the whole silver base we have now. Okay, so we will be adding the contrast paint to the armor to make it to change its color actually, and I will be doing that with airbrush because it's quick and easy, but you can do it by hand as well. So if you don't own airbrush, you can do that. And again, it's a technique that should help you with painting whole Alpha Legion army. So using an airbrush is very good idea to cut down the time you will spend on doing that. And you want to spray the whole model from the very narrow angle from the bottom, because you want to leave just a tiny amount of silver at top of each part. So you don't really want to cover the whole model. You want to just apply some kind of shadows with this contrast paint. It will change the color of most of the armor, but leave this very tiny silver highlights at the very top of again the parts I mentioned before. So head, shoulders, top of the backpack, knees, calves, and yeah, stuff like that. And even though it's airbrushing, you will probably apply few layers of this contrast, mostly because it's just easier to control. You probably could do this in one layer, but it isn't really worth the risk, because you can easily do too much of this contrast and cover too much of the silver paint and just end with very dark armor that will lose all these qualities you want to have at the end of airbrushing. I'm also using the contrast paint a little bit diluted because the original contrast paints straight from the pot are a little bit too thick, so I'm adding a little bit of the water to the mix. You should aim for a consistency closer to like regular Citadel shades, and then if you are using the contrast paint. If you are using the shade color for whatever reason, it should be fine. And that's pretty much it. 2 steps and you have very nice metallic blue armor, which is great for Alpha Legion. And you can easily paint like 20 marines this way, and it should be probably quicker than anything else you could do with them. I will be also doing the follow-up video, which will show you how to finish up the whole marine, including all the details, which will be available on my Patreon. So this will be exclusive video, but this technique alone should give you a lot to work with on your new army. So yeah, thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Cheers!